Welcome back, Dogs and Gooses,
Welcome back.
where, as Starks usually says, the dogs are dirty and the goose is silly. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Welcome back, everybody. It's only been a week this time.
Yeah. So we're doing pretty darn good, if you ask me.
I'd say so. And you better have eaten between these episodes. We say that every week, but I swear, some of you guys just don't take care of yourself.
Yeah.
But it was Thanksgiving last week.
So if you didn't eat, you're in even more trouble.
Well, then you missed out on some pie
Oh yeah.
and other things that were delicious.
Maybe a little eggnog even. Maybe
Yeah.
a little eggnog. It's that season.
Well, I myself have not touched the nog yet, but I
Oh.
might.
You need to jump on that train, Starks.
Well, I'll think about it.
If you say so. But today we're going guestless. I know what you're thinking, like, wow, everyone's chopping at the bit to get on their podcast, but we just decided to take a step back for a moment. We go back to our roots.
Yeah.
Just Starks and Williams and Starks. 100 years.
Yeah. We did this intentionally. It wasn't because we decided to plan it last minute because it was a busy week for us. So there, podcast listeners.
Yeah.
How do you like them apples?
Yeah, probably not very much, huh?
Yeah. Well, you'll have to get over it.
Goodness, but today we wanted to recognize someone who has done quite a bit for us, who we love quite dearly, and who's just fantastic. Now, Starks, you're looking at my hair right now. I know you listeners can't look at my hair, but I know you're probably looking at my hair, and you're probably surprised that with the hairstyle I have, that I'm still single.
I am. I really am.
Yeah, and you're like, wow, like just with the hairstyle alone, like
Yeah. Yeah, not to
you got
mention
to
the
go
mustache
on so many
too.
dates. Yeah, but especially the hairstyle.
Yeah, specifically the hairstyle.
And it's all because of Kelsey Starks,
It's true.
greatest hairstylist of all time. So listen, if you're wanting a good haircut, if you want to look sharper than you probably ever have in your life,
Mm-hmm.
then and you're around Payson, Utah. They're located in the Walmart Supercenter is Smart Style. Ask for Kelsey, and she will transform your head. Your head is her canvas.
It's true.
She's like one of the great artists of our time.
We've given Kelsey a couple shout outs on this show for different reasons, and it's because she's just so talented for so many different things.
I mean, not only does she write children's books, but she does a fantastic job at hair. Like,
mm-hmm. And she makes great biscuits and gravy.
Yes, she can. Oh my goodness.
I especially like the gluten in it.
Starks, you're being a goose.
Well, that's my job.
But anyway, before we get into the main portion of the show, I would like to turn the time over to the Starks for our news segment.
The Starks, I like it. Okay, so this is our news segment for the day. So I'm going to give you a couple of honorable mentions, and then we're going to go on to I think my favorite story. Actually, I have two favorite stories this week.
Ooh.
So
exciting.
The first one is a 104-year-old woman dies before Guinness can confirm her record as the oldest skydiver.
What a happy note.
Yeah. We like to keep things bright and happy on this podcast. Yeah, so she died essentially after going skydiving to break the record.
And it wasn't associated with the skydiving. Does it say anything about that?
No, it says she died in her sleep. Yeah.
You survived skydiving but die from sleep.
It happens. Also, monster hunters are conducting the largest search of Loch Ness in more than 50 years. There have been 1,000 official sightings of the Loch Ness monster, it says.
Official?
Yeah.
What makes it a sighting official?
I don't know. Maybe if you're a police officer and you see it, then it's official.
Or yeah, maybe.
I mean, there's that one picture, but that's what's on the article. But is it real or is it staged or what? No one knows. So we're gonna go in order of importance. This next story is our next most important and interesting story, and then the last one is the best one of all time.
Most important one.
Most important. So this one is Coast Guard arrests a man trying to run a giant hamster wheel across the Atlantic Ocean.
I don't know what could be more important than this, Starks. So I am excited for whoever the last one's going to be.
But the best part is, if you look up the article, there's a bunch of different quotes in here that are funny. We're just going to give a Spark Notes version. But one thing that I love is it says they're quoting the officer from one of the officers that arrested him. So this guy has on multiple occasions tried to make his way across the ocean.
He's a trooper, you know.
in different devices. This one says, one of our sectors, Sector Miami, got a call from a concerned boater that there was a man in a bubble that was lost and was asking for directions to Bermuda. and it says that they referred to his hamster wheel as the hamster wheel of doom, adding that it could get up to temperatures of up to 120 degrees inside the bubble, and that Bellucci was more likely to get pushed to England or swept into a swirling eddy in the middle of the Atlantic.
You gotta admire his tenacity.
I admire the tenacity. But
several attempts on different devices.
Well, did you ever hear about the guy? He won a Darwin Award. The guy who decided he was going to try and float with his lawn chair, and so he
but he didn't. It was an honorable mention because I don't think he actually died, right?
No, yeah, he didn't die.
He just got way up there.
Well, I think did they say 10,000 feet? He got way up
it was starting to get cold. He's like,
and he was up there for like 5 hours. I think he
brought a few sandwiches.
He brought a sandwich and some beers. Yeah, I think if I remember right. And a BB gun because he was going to shoot the balloons. Yeah, to have it drop. But they were weather grade, like weather balloons or something. I can't remember, but they were something special.
So he couldn't pop them.
Yeah, and they found him when he was sighted by an airplane that was taking off, if I remember the story correctly. And then they eventually were able to rescue him with some very skilled helicopter pilots, evidently.
That's something.
Yeah, that is something.
People never cease to amaze.
It's very true, and I don't know. You don't know. So the last piece of news, that other one wasn't the last piece. The last piece of news is the Denver Broncos. They're on a 5-game win streak, guys.
Oh my god!
It's let's get hyped because this is obviously the year they're gonna do it all. They're gonna win the Super Bowl all the way, baby.
Starks, let me ask you a couple of important questions. One, is Drew Lock back on their team, and 2, is Vic Fangio back as their coach?
No, Williams, you can't have the best of everybody all the time.
Obviously, they're not going to the Super Bowl.
Williams, don't doubt the Broncos.
They're missing their 2 most important pieces.
Well, Williams, you can still make a hole without 2 pieces. I didn't get enough sleep last night. Don't judge my analogy.
No one ever gets enough sleep at night, Starks. That's a fact.
Yeah.
You can take that down to the bank.
Well, maybe I will. What's it to you?
Well, I appreciate that new segment, Starks. You did a fine job. I'm looking over there. I'm like, wow, he did a fine job. I'm looking at his haircut, which he also got from Kelsey. I'm like,
it's a
wow.
Fine haircut.
Not only did he give a fine news segment, but he has a fine haircut.
Yep.
But today I was thinking about, because I went home for Thanksgiving, and I came back, which means I survived the journey to South Dakota for the people who were listening last week. I think I misspoke and said North Dakota last week. I get my Dakotas mixed up.
You don't even know where your parents live, Williams?
Half the time, no. If they just stayed in one place for a little while. That was a joke, you know. But my mom said something to me while I was up there about the podcast.
Mm.
And she talked about, or maybe it was when I don't know. Anyhow, I was talking to her, and she said that she listens to a few other podcasts, and she has this one that she really likes, that she feels like she knows the person, you know?
Yeah.
Like, they're almost like friends, almost, you know, through the podcast. And she's like, it'd be awesome if you guys were more like that. Like, I feel like I knew you more, kind of a thing.
Your mom doesn't feel like she knows you.
Now that I'm thinking about it.
Well, our apologies, Linda. I feel like I know you, but I guess it's not mutual.
But, and I thought, you know what? Then I also, because I wanted to do something that would balance that with something that we're both familiar with, Starks. You know, this is kind of we didn't have a lot of time because we had some things lined up. I had some potential ideas that involved having a guest. But so I thought, what would be something that we're both kind of experts in, and that will allow people to get to know us a little bit.
Do tell.
Well, and I think this really plays to your strengths, maybe even more than mine. Let's talk a little bit about dating.
Oh, all right.
just a little. Just yeah, it's crazy stuff, Starks.
Okay, yeah, let's
Are you
talk about
game?
it. I'm game.
It's kind of funny because Starks and I do talk a lot about this. Just kind of,
Just usually not on the air,
yeah, not on the air.
where
And we don't
everyone in
have
the
to
world
yeah,
can listen to it twice,
exactly,
like they do every week.
as they should.
Yeah, respectable.
Why we got so many numbers on our podcast?
I'm just tired of people trying to get my number.
Yeah, well, probably trying to date you, to be honest.
It's the problem I have to deal with this haircut. It just happens.
But I know.
All right, Williams, what's your first question? Where do we start?
Well, let's start with as a philosopher, let's define some terms. You
Okay.
always got to start with defining terms. So, what is dating? You think, Starks? How would you define dating?
I would probably define it as the process of looking for your significant other, your spouse.
So you associate with more of a long-term approach.
Yes. I think if you're dating only to have fun, then you're doing it wrong. Then I think that's not really the purpose, or I think that's not a good way to do it.
Right. You think there should be a longer term.
Yeah, and you should have fun while you're doing it, but that shouldn't be the primary goal.
Fair enough. I mean, I think that's the only term. Are there some other terms that we need to define? I think dating is the main one.
I think that's the main one.
Now, kind of dissecting that definition a little. Having fun, I think. Well, let's start with the idea that I don't think that that's the general consensus of the definition in culture. Would you agree?
Yeah, probably.
And I think it's become more of a short term. I don't want to say looser per se, but people, the commitment's not as much there as I think dating used to be.
Yeah, well, we live in a society with a lot of hookup culture.
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, I don't know that you would call that dating though. That would be hooking up, I guess.
You would consider it like even a different definition.
Yeah, well,
or
I
a
think
different
if you're trying to find a one night stand, I wouldn't call that dating. So we kind of live in a society that is more focused on hookup culture than it is around long term relationship culture. And so I think that would be where the difference in definition comes from.
Fair enough. And also with that, do you feel in order for us to date in the way that along with your definition, I think other people have to share that definition.
Uh-huh.
Do you think that there's enough people who have the same idea of dating
Yeah.
to where it is a feasible?
Yeah, I think there's still a fair number of people who have that idea. Like I think there's plenty. I don't know that I would necessarily say that it's the majority of people that are looking for the same thing right now. Because the thing is I feel like everybody wants that at some point, but not everybody wants that right now.
That's a good point.
So for me, if that's not what you're looking for right now, then I don't necessarily think that you should be dating, like maybe like making friends and doing whatever stuff. But also, I think that goes back to your philosophy on like physical affection and how much of it's appropriate at what time.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. I, even when I look at, because you and I have a similar idea of dating.
Uh-huh.
And we've talked about that before in our private conversations, to which not all of you were privileged to hear.
Yeah. Many of you weren't.
But I have grown to notice that even people who, because typically we date within a religious group, we're looking for certain ideals.
Yeah,
there's
or
a lot
within
of them
your
around.
culture. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And we're dating within a particular culture, like
you're
you say.
looking for common ideas.
Right. But even within our particular culture, there's a lot of people who have a little different idea of dating still.
Uh-huh.
And I find that interesting and also a headache.
So, Williams,
And
can you give us an example? Give us an example of an instance where you have been pleasantly surprised and also unpleasantly surprised.
well, Starks, you know that there, Starks and I have this difference. You know, we have a lot of same ideas on a lot of things, but he's a little bit more of an optimist, and me, you know, I'm a little bit more of a pessimist. And so we kind of camp out in those different camps.
Yeah. You might call them the dirty dogs and the silly gooses. Not to say that those are the definitions.
Yeah,
of the dirty
those
dog
those
and
aren't the
silly
definitions
goose.
per se.
So it's don't feel the need to.
It's difficult to say pleasantly surprised. You know, I'm not the best at dating. I haven't gone on a ton of dates at all.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think of, for like a negative example, I think of a one that comes to mind. It wasn't even a date really. Remember that one time that you and I, Starks and I, occasionally go to Institute, which is kind of a church event. There are church sponsors with a lot of other people our age. When we were living in
Cox Apartments.
Cox Apartments.
Uh-huh.
And we were in, I think it was like families and marriage class that day, or
yeah, something like that.
And I think I turned and made a comment to you about it. But this one girl was listing. I'm sure that she was a nice girl, maybe in person, but she was not coming across as a very
I remember
pleasant person to be around for one.
Uh-huh.
Or a very, she didn't seem to match all of her ideals that she had for a spouse or significant other. And she was someone asked the class about like what kind of things you want in a significant other, and she's listing off this whole list. She's like, I expect him to be this, that. So it's great to have expectations, but you just.
So you're saying that this isn't a pleasant surprise story, because I remember this story. You were not very happy with that girl.
No, I mean,
Wibbs,
I wasn't like.
I can't remember your
frustrated,
specific
but
comment.
I made a funny joke.
I can't remember your specific comment, but yeah, it was something. You said something to me that was a little bit more pessimistic than I normally go for.
Really? From the optimist? No.
So I'm gonna. Do you have more to say on that?
Well, I think like turning that into a dating scenario, she's more of shopping around for a particular like perfect thing. She's not dating, getting to know people as much as she's like, does it check this box, check this box, check this. I think to a certain degree we ought to do that. But it's
well, I think it's about knowing what you're looking for, because if you think about it, I think this is something I've been thinking about a little bit lately. I think a lot of times as people are looking for somebody who is going to be a good spouse, but the metrics that they use to place that are poor metrics, because sometimes like you want somebody who you can talk to, but sometimes people feel like they need somebody who's always entertaining them, and the reality is the traits that you're looking for your significant other, for your spouse, is not somebody who's going to entertain you. Like it's your job to go do things and to develop hobbies that entertain yourself, and create joint hobbies with your spouse. Create that life, but also it's not their job to be your constant entertainer and someone who keeps you like mentally busy all the time.
Correct.
And I feel like that's part of it. And then the other part is you're also not looking for just like a utility tool. So this is more just a general point than a specific point to your comments. But like you're not looking for somebody who's a utility tool, because that's the problem you run into with like when people overly focus on their skills in dating. You want somebody who is competent and who's going to be a good addition to your life, but that's not the whole thing. You don't just want somebody who you can just use because they make your life easier. And actually that was one thing, to get a little bit more personal. We talked for you, Linda, here's a personal story.
Maybe let's not name names.
I apologize. Well,
someone
you, like people. No, I was just kidding. I was no,
I don't know
but
even what story you're thinking of, but
well, it's not actually like that the story was relevant. I was just saying we're gonna get personal
oh,
for our
okay.
audience, and that was Linda's request.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So that's why.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah. So I dated somebody in the past who at one point the conversation came up. It was actually right before we wound up breaking up. So it was one of my exes, and she said something along the lines of she started like for whatever reason listing off reasons why she liked me, and every single one of them was a reason of utility. There wasn't a single one that was uh like that was like, hey, I really enjoy spending time with you and stuff like that. It was like, oh, you have a car, you are good with fixing things, you have this, that, and just like was listing off different things. And like, yeah, that was cool that there were those things that she noticed, but I was at the time I was like, well, but it sounds like it's not that you actually enjoy being around me that much. And the chances are is that she did appreciate some of those things because like we were dating at the time.
Hmm.
But even still, it showed me where her priorities lied in looking for a significant other. And so, to your point, I think the mistake a lot of people make is they make this to-do list, and then when they make that to-do list,
You
it's
forget the person.
yeah, exactly. It's just a list of like certain characteristics, and the reality is like nobody's gonna be perfect for you. Nobody's gonna do that. Like you find somebody who has similar core values, and if you're lucky, maybe some similar interests. But even those, like as long as you find somebody you can get along with, I feel like that's kind of my take. I mean, take it from a 25-year-old single guy,
Hmm.
but yeah.
I think that's a good one. I have another idea of a time when I was kind of negatively surprised.
Fair enough.
I'm very good at noticing things that I dislike. Sometimes it's harder to notice the things that I do. That's it.
Okay.
I do. I am an optimist about certain things, but let me tell you, dating has just been a pain to me.
Okay. Throw it at
All
us,
right.
Williams.
So some people I've discovered, and I found this while dating, they have these weird like time limits in their mind
Mm.
for dating. And what I mean by that is I was dating this girl, I went on a few dates with her, and she was telling me that she had like one boyfriend, and the only reason that she termed him was a boyfriend was they had dated for several years.
Mm.
Now she had had other
So she didn't like to
relationships.
put labels on things.
Well, I mean, I don't mind the label thing. I don't know if I care as much about all the time,
Uh huh.
but she didn't really consider like she had other relationships. She's like anything more than like 5 dates is dating. But she, in order to, because boyfriend is the step before that's when it starts to get serious, kind of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to have like a set, like we'd have to be dating for years in order for anything to,
Yeah.
you know, for any sort of meaningful relationship to develop.
Yeah.
I don't think that that is necessary. But also, I'm not saying like, oh, 2 dates in, like things are serious, because I don't think that's necessarily right
We
either.
need to give adequate time to get to know each other.
Right, but I don't think you should be so hesitant in things that you're like, okay, we got to be dating for 5 years before
Yeah.
anything.
I think I could see a place for some time limits because sometimes like relationships can get you really caught up
Hmm.
in everything.
I don't think you should rush, but I don't.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, you can get so caught up in everything, and especially if it's your first relationship, you get so excited. You've never experienced this before. This person seems so perfect. Yada yada yada. I think, however, that the problem with creating arbitrary
Time limits
time limits
or
and
expectations for time.
expectations, both because you can have both problems. Some people want to move too fast. Some people want to move too slow. And I think you need to let the relationship genuinely grow. And just relationships grow at different paces. You have friends that you meet that within like a couple of days you're like best pals and you can talk to them like your best pals immediately.
Hmm.
And then you have friends that you meet who are really awkward and you're awkward with them for a while, and then you get to be really good friends, and then things aren't as awkward.
Yeah, it depends on the person you're with.
It does, and it depends on like past experience and all that stuff. So we don't want to make this a completely negative episode
No,
about
and
dating.
it's not going to be, probably, maybe.
Well, I mean, I think that depends on which one of us is talking, Williams, is what it sounds like.
I could bring up stories where you weren't too pleased with dating.
Well,
if you need me to.
No, don't get me wrong. I have been very not pleased with dating on multiple occasions.
And I've been there with him through most of those.
You have. Williams has been a great friend. He's seen a lot of secondhand heartbreaks and the like.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. Like, I've seen this man distraught a couple of times. But also, I
It's
will
not
be.
true.
I'm
I'm
impressed.
always stoic.
I am impressed at his ability to come back, though, and because honestly, like, I don't know if I could. Because you had some like serious relationships in which the girl seemed super awesome, and it's not that the girl wasn't super awesome in the end. It was just like things happen, kind of a thing. But I'm amazed at your resilience and resolve, like just being willing to accept it and move on with life. Because I think also with relationships and dating is, it doesn't take super long to start to enjoy a person, and you like this person, but all of a sudden, no matter how nice you make it, like a breakup is still basically them saying, yeah, you're not someone I really am into, or like there's something between us that I think that I don't know how to put it into words here.
It's basically they're saying
That
you're not
doesn't line
enough.
up. Yeah. Kind of, it always feels like they're saying.
That's what
you're
it
not
feels
enough.
like. Yeah, and that's not necessarily what people are always thinking, but that's
No.
kind of what it seems like sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's tough, and thank you, Williams. I do try to be resilient, but it can be difficult. I think for me, it boils down to I'm not really satisfied. Just living my life as it is by myself, like, and that's not to say that there's anything wrong with living your life by yourself and doing like adventurous things. I do a lot of things I like, and I really enjoy my life as it is. But I do think that it's also meant to be shared, and that your higher purpose in this life is to have a family and to spend time with your family and to do all those things. But to your point in terms of that, I think one of the best lessons that I learned from one of my first breakups, because it kind of happened out of nowhere. Honestly, almost every one of my breakups has been kind of out of nowhere. And maybe, it wasn't actually out of nowhere, but they always seemed like that to me. Like, it seemed like everything was going really well. Like, we were talking about the future and yada, yada, yada.
It just kind of happens
and then
at
just,
some point.
yeah, just all of a sudden something happens. And usually there wasn't any events coupled. Like, I never had like a time where I don't think I've had a single breakup where there was like any drastic change. It was more just like one day whoever I was dating just came and they were like, hey, like, I'm having second thoughts or whatever. But I think for me, one of the best things I learned from my first relationship is that there's probably two main lessons. The first one, and not necessarily in order of importance, but one that is important and one that I always try to remember during breakups, is as hard as it is to realize, life is the way it is.
For better or for worse.
Yeah, well, because not necessarily the first girl, because that was a little different, but some of the later girls or some of the earlier girls I dated, when they broke up with me, I was like, wow, this like can't be. If I just keep trying, then this will work. Because then she'll recognize my effort, she'll realize she's making a mistake, and she'll give up. And in many ways, I one of my problems with dating is I make myself too available, which is something that I have worked on and I do much better with. But this the problem with this is it's not your job to convince people to like you.
Which is, I think, is hard to understand.
Yes.
Or you can understand it mentally, but
But it's hard to,
internalize.
yeah. And so my point is that in my first one, it was like, this can't be, like, she's gonna come back, she's gonna change her mind, she's gonna do X, she's gonna do Y, and ultimately I realized that's not true. Like, life is what it is, and you can't change everything. And so obviously we're just talking about relationships. We're not talking about like as serious things as, deaths or whatever. But it's true in all things. And so it helped me a lot with my other relationships, because when they ended, rather than being like, oh man, I can't believe this is happening, I need to do this to get her back or whatever, I was like, okay, she made her decision, and it's time for me to make mine. And by that I mean not necessarily that I'm going to break up with her, because she already did that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there was that one Rhett and Link song, the breakup song, where they like sing to her a breakup, and she's like, I broke up with you like a month ago.
But they're just now internalizing it.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
okay, doubling down.
Yeah, exactly. No, but it's time for you to make your decision and to make of life what you can. So for me, that actually, as depressing as it can be in the moment, is very hopeful shortly thereafter, where it's like, okay, I no longer have a girlfriend, I no longer have a potential relationship. What am I going to do differently now?
Mm-hmm.
And you, to be clear, should not try and mold yourself into whoever you think the other person wants, but you should try and become a better person. And to me, if I'm being honest, I think a lot of dating is trying to become the type
best
of
you
person.
kind of a thing, or
Yeah, well, but I think it's about becoming the type of person who you'd want to date, essentially. Like for me, let's see. I wasn't planning on reading this. I guess I didn't even know the topic, so obviously I didn't. But one of my affirmations that I have two things, and this is all part of the first lesson that I learned. One that I have is, I will find my spouse by preparing myself to be a good husband and father. And I think that is far better way to date, than anything else, is just by trying to be like the best person you can be, and trying to do the best that you can to fulfill the role that you would have in that relationship. And the second part, actually, I do have another affirmation for it, but the second part that I realize that helps me a lot is, who are they to determine my value? Like, they may be somebody that I spend a lot of time with. They may have this, they may have that, but who are they to determine my value? Like, there's very few people that should be able to determine my value. And really, it's pretty much just me. And then obviously, we weigh heavily the opinions of our loved ones, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're determining your value.
mm-hmm.
And so when you realize those two things, I feel like for me, at least, those have been extremely helpful to, I don't know, to push past those relationships.
To prop you up.
Yeah. Well, and to continue, like, doing what you're doing.
I do think that's really neat. I appreciate that you write that stuff down too, because I feel I remember we both served missions for our church,
Mm-hmm.
and nowadays you get to talk to your family weekly and stuff. But back when, just a few years ago, when you and I went out, we were only able to talk to our families 4 times a year. We had to email them each week,
Uh-huh.
but that's as good as we got, pretty much.
Yeah, it's kind of like a sabbatical almost, in a way.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. It was in a
Yeah.
lot of ways, and it still is, but
But
it's a little
different.
easier
Yeah,
with family,
it's a little different.
maybe.
Well, I think you have a better support system.
Right.
It may not make things overall easier. I wouldn't be able to say, but
Neither would I, but I just remember we knew it was going to be difficult going in.
uh-huh.
And when we were being trained to be missionaries over at the Missionary Training Center, I had a gentleman who was teaching us a bunch of stuff, and he admonished us to keep a little place in the back of our journal. And where we'd write things down to help us, that would help us in times where we were struggling.
Mm-hmm.
He called it our fail safe or whatever. I think there's power in creating those, not just, I mean, for a lot of things in life, but I think also including dating, because it's hard, because you do question your self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's been maybe a lot of my problem. Maybe that's why I don't like dating as much, because I'm like, wow, this person doesn't value me.
Yeah.
I'm like,
one thing, Williams, and we're gonna get even. This is more like a personal conversation at this point. One thing that I've learned, I think, since my most recent relationship, which Williams knows was not super long ago, like 4 or 5 months ago, it ended, and that one was probably my most serious relationship. Probably the biggest thing that I have learned is the importance of just being yourself and not really caring about the other person and what they think. And that doesn't mean you don't you don't completely shut that out.
Yeah, you still take
But
showers.
yeah, you still take showers. I mean, once a month at least.
Yeah, but
But
no more than that. Yeah.
And I feel like that's very helpful in a bunch of different ways. First off, it actually even makes you a better person to date. It makes you more dateable to do that and to be that way. And I honestly think that that's a lot of what helps make relationships work is being established in yourself and knowing who you are. And the hard thing is if you had asked me if I was established before all this happened, I would have said yes. But I feel way more established now than I did back then.
Mm-hmm.
And it's helped me a lot in dating, but more importantly, it's helped me a lot in life. So
that's interesting, how it transitioned.
Yeah,
That it was to the broader spectrum of life instead of just.
Yeah, well, I think it's partially about becoming like an adult, and for us, it's about becoming men and like people who are going to be good husbands and fathers. Is like allowing yourself to be yourself, not being afraid to be like unapologetically you for other people, and specifically in this case, your dates.
That's true. I will say that I'm one of those people who it's really bad sometimes because after I have an interaction with someone, I'm constantly just like it comes back in my mind. I'm replaying it like,
Mm-hmm.
ooh, I shouldn't have said that, or even if
Yeah,
it's like minor,
yeah,
I kind of second guess myself on a lot of things, and it's kind of dumb. But like, and that happens a lot of times after dates. The the dates in which I felt like I presented myself the best, even if I didn't have like a perfect interaction with the person necessarily, I felt good afterwards.
mm-hmm.
Saying, just that I had presented myself as myself rather
Uh-huh.
than trying to force myself to be someone else.
Yeah. Well, you need to be genuine,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that was one thing that I learned from my last relationship. Is it was kind of a weird thing because I was genuinely me, but it well, okay, so let me rephrase that. It was close enough to who I was that it felt genuine at the time. But as soon as that relationship ended, it was very like upsetting for other reasons and like because the relationship ended, but I also felt kind of freed. Like I felt like I was no longer obligated to be like that person that was required for that relationship.
A version of yourself rather than
Well,
yourself.
the funny thing is, and I'll use this analogy.
Mm-hmm.
The funny thing is it was not even different than what I do and who I am already. I just felt forced into it. For example, like and it's not necessarily a problem with the girl I was dating.
Mm-hmm.
To be clear, it's more of a problem with me, and perhaps she did some things or said some things that were like um, unrealistic expectations, right? But a lot of this comes from me too, because the story I'll share is like she did nothing wrong. She and I were talking, and we both talked about how we wanted to learn Spanish, and then we talked about how we could learn it together, and like yada yada yada. And I remember at the time, it was very weird for me because I wanted to learn Spanish, but another part of me didn't. All of the sudden, and so I almost dreaded like trying to learn Spanish with this girl, even though it had already been my goal. Um, and then as soon as we broke up, that went away, and I went back to it being my goal. I owned it, and I was kind of excited for it. And not necessarily a problem with her, but it was because I felt forced into that role, into like, and that honestly isn't a big deal. I was just talking about learning Spanish,
Mm-hmm.
but it's kind of representative to me of a lot of the issues that I had in that instance.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah. So really quick, Williams, we should
Mm-hmm.
pause all this conceptual talk and discuss. We should tell some dating stories. So you're the host, but can I hijack for just a second?
Go ahead.
Okay,
Starks, I guess.
Williams, what's your most embarrassing dating story?
Oh, in terms of embarrassing, it's kind of difficult because I don't think I'd ever do anything that was
Mm-hmm.
like real embarrassing.
Yeah.
But I guess the most cringy
Mm-hmm.
dating, would that be okay?
That works. Yeah.
I think it was a. I think I was in high school. I think I just turned 16 not too long before, and
Mm-hmm.
I was fairly new to the dating stuff. And me and my buddy George, we wanted to do a double date, and we were gonna do it at the Roll Arena, um, which was a roller skate place.
Mm-hmm.
But a few things, I hate roller skating. I had never really done it before, and so I knew I was just gonna fall down the entire time. So
Mm.
I wasn't super happy with that, and it had snowed a little bit the day before, and I was new to driving,
Yeah.
and I was gonna be the one driving everybody, and I did not feel super comfortable going the distance to the roller arena. And so instead, me, him, and the two girls that we had invited, we were at my place. We my family just kind of went upstairs or whatever, and we played Just Dance 3. Like it wasn't horrible, but it was really cringy.
Mm.
I don't. I kind of the whole situation together. I think, yeah, it was not what it was expected to be, sort of thing.
So you felt like it went poorly.
Yeah,
Looking
and that was an
back,
early date.
looking back, now that you've experienced more dating, do you still feel like it went poorly, or do you think maybe that was just unrealistic expectations when you're young? Because that sounds fine to me. Like something happens and you can't go, and you're like,
Yeah, but it
let's
was
just
just kind of
just dance. Like,
there was
that
an
just sounds
awkward
fun.
dynamic between.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So maybe that was more the problem than what we actually ended up doing or whatnot. And I do look back at it with less cringe than I had at the time. But back then I was like, and for a long time afterwards, I was like, that was not a great experience.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe there's another one that was more recent that was cringy. Not really, because I think I like now that I'm a little older, a little bit more mature, maybe, and understand things better. It's more of just like seeing a person and
Uh-huh.
just kind of getting to know them.
Yeah.
And there are people who I've gotten to know, um, and who've just been weird a little bit, at least seeming to me. I'm sure I know that I have come across as weird to a lot of people.
Yeah, it happens.
So, and that's showing my real me, so
Hey.
I don't know where to go from there, but
Hey, Williams, you know my one friend, Jake?
mhm.
Jake, you know what I love about Jake is he'll do some really eccentric things, but he completely owns it. And he has girls like ask for his number sometimes and different things.
Just because he owns what he's
Just
doing.
well, yeah. And have you ever gone with him through a drive-through? Very
No.
eccentric. Yeah. I mean, you've spent a little time around Jake, but
I know that he's eccentric.
well, but he'll like,
little,
he's super fun, dude. Like,
no, he is. Yeah.
I love Jake to death, but he'll like go through drive-through, and they'll like come to the window, and he's like, hey, are you gonna give me a free drink today? Or he'll be like, hey, like you need to wash your windows, and like he'll just say random stuff just because he can.
But that's also him.
Yeah.
The ways in which I'm weird are not that cool.
Well, no, you're way cooler because you crochet.
Oh, you didn't have to tell everyone. No.
Well, Williams, I just wanted to brag a little bit on your account.
Oh.
Also, is your microphone okay? It looks like it's like sitting on your chin.
Is it?
Yeah, it looks like it is.
Oh. Is that better?
I hope so. Hopefully,
I think the sound's coming through. I see the little thing on the computer going,
okay.
like it's picking stuff up.
Well, I hope it's not just been me talking for the last half hour. Like, that's a good question. That reminds me of this one date I went on.
Hey, if it works, it works. Don't knock it.
Want to listen to our one-sided podcast? Join us next week on Dogs and Gooses.
Mostly just gooses.
Mostly just gooses.
Do you have like a cringy date or a embarrassing date? I guess
I was trying to think. The instances that I've been on that were awkward or embarrassing were not usually actual dates. I feel like I usually do pretty well on the dates themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Texting in between, I struggle with a little bit.
Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah, and then
Quick side note on that. I've come to believe after a while, like, because there's like an expectation that you got to wait at least as long, maybe a little longer than the amount of time that they did for them to text you back, to text them back. It is my belief currently that you shouldn't worry too much about how you text, maybe, as long as it feels good and you just get it done. And it doesn't matter as much about the time that you take to text. I think you could text as soon or as maybe not as late as you want, but
I think I had a discussion about this with Trevor, who we'll probably have on the podcast soonish, so you guys may come to know who that is.
Not to be confused with my brother Trevor.
Yeah, not.
I'm sure he might be on the podcast too. I don't know.
Yeah, he probably will too if he accepts our offer. He's more
like if we accept his offer. If you know what I'm saying.
That's true. He has been begging us, but he is a busy man managing those Costa Vitas and whatnot.
Yeah, you best believe. Yeah,
Costa Vita wherever it is.
He's a manager. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Trevor. I didn't mean to blaspheme against your place. So Trevor and I were discussing this, and it's interesting because I never thought about it this way, but I kind of agree. Mm-hmm. Trevor said, I used to expect girls to text back quickly because he said, here's the thing. People see it. They do. Mm-hmm. Like everyone sees their phone.
Well, that's a good presupposition to have.
Yeah. Generally people see your message. If it's like every once in a while they don't text you for a few hours, you can assume they're taking a nap or they're taking a test or whatever. They're at work and they're not allowed to have their phone. But if it's every time and it's not clear that that's their schedule, they see it. And so he said, I used to expect people to text me back right away. And then he said, I realized after a while that I was expecting them to prioritize me over everything else they were doing. And the reality is, for most of our relationships and dating, we aren't that high of priority. Like at some point, if you do get married to them, even if you've been dating for a long time or you're engaged, yes, you are a pretty high priority at that point. But in early dating, like there's a lot of things that out-prioritize you, in my opinion, and it grows with your connection and your level of commitment to each other.
Become more of a priority.
Yes, absolutely.
But I don't think that's necessarily the expectation everyone has.
Yes, and also I think it's kind of rude to take a long time if you don't have to. Yeah. It depends on how long.
I'm really bad at it.
It depends on how long. Okay, so I'm texting a girl right now. I don't think she'll listen to this podcast anytime soon, but she does know that I've been running a podcast that's wildly successful.
Well, I mean, yeah.
I mean, she probably listens. Well, oh, crap, she's going to listen.
Yeah, right away.
I'm going to tell this story anyway, but I'm really excited about her. I've really enjoyed talking to her, and she and I text each other probably every couple hours or so, and sometimes it's even longer if we're busy, which is fine. Like, if you're going to be texting all the time, you don't want to be texting like every couple seconds, unless you just have nothing going on. Then it's different. So if you're spacing out your texting because you're busy and because you're going to be talking all day, I feel like I'm 100% fine. If it's a game, then I feel like it gets a little bit harder. But also, if somebody takes like a day and a half to text me back, I'm not going to text them back in 15 seconds.
Yeah.
So I'm not a fan of necessarily texting games, but also I will say being completely honest, I am guilty of at least some of it. I try not to do too much, but
yeah. But yeah, that was a sidebar.
Yeah, that was a side tangent. So to your question, I think the most awkward situations I've been in have been when I don't know if I'm on a date. So Williams is familiar with one.
Interesting.
So there have been instances where I've gone to hang out, and then it was treated like a date, but I'm not sure if it's a date. Like for example, Williams, you remember? I think it was last year. There was a girl that we both know and we knew, and I asked her on a date, and she said, "Oh, that's perfect because we're actually doing a group date, with like this bunch of people on Friday," and I was like, "Great." And then she texted me a couple days later, and she said, "Hey, by the way, not everybody was able to find a date, so we're just going to make it like a group hangout thing."
Yeah, I think I remember you saying something about that.
Yeah. the most awkward experience of my life because she was the only person I knew there,
Oh, sorry, but she knew everyone else,
but
right?
she
Yeah.
knew everyone else, and she didn't stay near me. And so naturally, I was like, okay, well, if she's not going to stay somewhat near me, like it's not officially a date, so I'm just going to socialize with other people like I do. Like I'm a
Hmm.
fairly social person. And so I start socializing with these people, and there's this one guy in particular that I kind of hit it off with. And so we were just chatting, having a good time, just, just horsing around because it was we went to a corn maze.
Hmm.
And at one point she made a comment because I was talking to this guy, getting to know him, and she was like, "You think that he was your date?" And I was like, "What? You're the one that's like not staying near me, and I thought this wasn't a date." And so, and she made it jokingly, to be fair, but
Right.
but at the time I was like, I don't know what to expect because if this is a date, then I have been a terrible date, but also so is she. But if it's not a date, then it's been acceptable behavior. So she told me it wasn't, but she just said that like it was, and so yeah, that was very very awkward, and I came home like miserable. I didn't have any fun.
Yeah. 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 I remember you coming home after that.
Yeah. Can you think, Williams? You've heard a lot of dating experiences from me. Can you think of any that were particularly embarrassing or awful?
But I thought the one that was funny, but it wasn't really a date that you went on. It
Uh,
was actually fairly recently. It was funny to me.
what was
It
that?
wasn't when you fell off the bowl.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I uh, I went to a place called Corn Bellies, and it's a big corn maze type thing where they have also rides and stuff. And I rode an electronic bull. It was super awesome. In case you're wondering, we were not going to post the video, but it's super dope. I was on there forever before I fell off,
Yeah, it was
listening to
probably more than 1 second.
8 Second Ride by Chris Ledoux, which is not sponsored, by the way.
But which we still love.
Yeah, yeah. So it's 8 Second Ride by Chris Ledoux. I was listening to that, like just jamming out while I'm riding on this bull. Super awesome. And I fell off. So what actually happened is,
He was thrown
what
off,
had
which is
happened
cooler than
was,
falling.
well, no, I did fall off. So it's I was on there for a minute, and it was starting to get like a little bit wilder, and I didn't really want to be on there long enough for it to actually get crazy, like super crazy. I just wanted to be on there long enough to say that I had done it and to experience what it was
You
like.
wanted 8 seconds.
Yes, 8 seconds. I got well more than 8 seconds. So I set a goal for a certain part of the
And this was an
song that I knew
electronic
was
bowl,
coming up.
not
It was
a
an
not a
electronic. Yeah, it
yeah.
wasn't a real bowl. And so it gets to this point where I'm like, okay, the next serious throw it gives me, I'm just gonna fall. I'm not gonna try and stay on because I don't want to be like hanging on and hurt my hand or my wrist or whatever. Um, and so it spins and I just like kind of fall off. But because I didn't have it throw me, it didn't throw me far enough, and so my tailbone landed on the base of the platform where the bull was like coming up out of the rubber stuff or
Mhm.
the mats, and I seriously hurt my tailbone. It was sore for 3 weeks, like really really bad.
I had tried
And
to contact him earlier for something, and so he
yeah,
calls me on his way home and just saying, "Ow, ow,
yeah, my
ow," every
butt
little
hurt
bit.
every time I hit a bump. It hurt so bad, and like I feel like I have a pretty high pain tolerance, but that was bad. Like I didn't sleep very well that night because every time I rolled over, my butt would hurt really bad.
But you're like,
So
it was a lot of fun though. It
it
was a lot
was
of
fun.
fun.
It was fun, and I've done it now. Like that's why I did is I kind of like I need to ride the bull at least once. So I've done it. Also, the video was really lame. It feels like you're going way faster think than you think you are. You're going way faster than you actually are. Is what it feels like.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I watched the video afterwards, and in my mind, when I was on the bull, I was like, "This is pretty good. Like, I must be doing great." And then I watched the video, and I was like, "That is so lame. I should have tried to hang on for longer."
But it was funny, even though it wasn't a date
Yeah,
really.
it
But
wasn't, but it was a sort of like we.
it's kind of a group
It was
thing,
kind of a
and
group thing,
you
yeah.
kind of paired off a little.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was funny. If I had more dating stories for you to share, Starks, I mean, if you can think of one.
Um, I don't know, Williams. I'm trying to think if you had a good one.
A lot of mine are fairly mundane. I feel like
You did play pickleball with that one girl. but I don't remember if anything was significant there.
Yeah. See, that's the problem. It's just nothing.
It's kind of
Maybe I'm too just plain of a person.
Williams,
I
you
don't know.
gotta find a girl. Let me tell you, there's nothing like talking to a girl, and you go on so many dates that you're like not really expecting a ton anymore.
Mhm.
You know, that's the trouble with dating at our age, is you've been on so many dates, and like you kind of are past that phase of like meeting somebody for the first time. You're like, maybe this is the one. Like you're just kind of there.
I feel like I've
But-
kind of forgotten that a little bit. I don't know. Maybe that's just my pessimistic side.
Probably.
But still, I'm there.
Yeah. Well, perfect, Williams. So you started that way. I had that beaten out of me.
I'm sure I
You're-
did it a few times and it just bit me. It doesn't take much for
And-
something to bite me
and-
and me to go, no.
So what you're saying is you're pessimistic, but really you're a quick learner, and I'm a slow learner.
Pessimism is just a sign of maturity.
Well, I still haven't matured then.
I'm not completely pessimistic,
No.
but
But you got to experience Williams going on a date. You're not expecting a ton out of the date. The girl's like probably she's pretty, but you know you've been on a bunch of other dates with other girls who are pretty. And that's not to say that like you're gonna treat it like it's nothing, but you don't have high expectations. And you go on a
Right,
date
yeah.
and you're talking to this girl, and she says something, or does something that demonstrates like her character, and obviously you're already like you're on a date, so you're attracted to her,
mhm.
and it's just like this instant like, oh, I like that. I want to get to know this girl better. So that's
See, that's been
something
hard.
You've got to find, Williams. You gotta.
That'd be nice. I will say I've kind of had like the opposite experience a little bit, to where I'm talking to this girl and she seems really awesome, and then all of a sudden she says some things I'm like, kind of red flags, kind of nonchalant almost, but just like
Yeah.
those are actually some fairly big things.
Mm-hmm. Well, we don't necessarily need to go into this,
Right? No. Yeah.
into your specific like issues on the podcast, but you know, in those cases, I would say, are you looking in the wrong places, or do you have the wrong expectations?
That's the thing.
Or
Where
do you
the
need to
right
meet more
place. Well,
you know?
that might just be it.
Because sometimes you just need a bigger.
I'm kind of an introvert. I'm not. You know that.
Well,
Starks is the extrovert. I'm the introvert. Just like he's the optimist. I'm the pessimist. You know.
it is true.
It's harder for me to desire to go into those situations with, where it's just me putting myself out there. I don't really like big events with a lot of people who I don't know. Like it's different if you go there with a couple friends or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like you and I went to several events, but I was always kind of a little bit more reserved to myself.
Mm-hmm.
But it was easier to go with like people I know.
Here's my optimism speaking really quickly.
All right, let it out a little bit.
Okay, I'm just
Let
gonna
it run
say,
around.
This is, and I say this because I feel like you're not alone in this. I feel like there's a lot of people who relate to that. They don't really want to go out in public. They don't really want to do this. They don't really want to do that. In my opinion, if you want to have the perfect relationship, something where you're happy, where you're genuinely where you want to be in life, there's a price that you will have to pay in some way or another. And
Right.
nobody can pay that for you but you. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to pay the same price that like I will pay or that anyone else will pay. But I do think that sometimes that price is doing things that are uncomfortable. Sometimes it's not though.
And I
Sometimes
have
it's
done a lot
different
of things that are uncomfortable.
And you have, and I've seen that. So I'm not saying that directed at you.
No,
because I have
but
seen.
I also recognize that maybe I haven't done as much as I should too. It's this weird balance because you've seen me. I've grown leaps and bounds, especially in the dating realm.
You have, yeah.
Like I went from. I did not go on very many dates at all for a long time.
Before we were roommates, you I think had gone on 1 date, 2 dates.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not in my entire life.
No, but in college.
In college.
Yeah.
And I was a couple years into college.
Yeah.
And
that despite all the girls begging for your number, Williams. How do you say no?
You say they were there, but I was looking around.
They used to knock on our door all the time. Is Williams here? He is, but he doesn't take walk-ins.
You have to schedule an appointment with his secretary.
And Benj is out of office.
But yeah. So I don't know. I will say that the biggest shift I think that made me a little bit more open to dating in the first place. Because one, I am by nature introverted. Once I get to know you a little bit, we have a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
I might talk your ear off, but until that point, I am quite silent.
Mm-hmm.
Not like overly so.
No,
if you chat with me,
you're pretty social. Like you do well at being social when you want to be. I think that just sometimes you don't necessarily want to be.
right. And for better or for worse, I don't know. But what point was I trying to get at? It
I don't know, Williams.
Oh, but I had an ideology for a little while. It was just my own personal ideology that prevented me from actually pursuing dating in its entirety. And it was me having to go through the process of changing that ideology, which was a huge shift for me, for one. But also, it was very difficult for me to go from. I don't necessarily want to feel the need to go into the ideology right now. I don't think it's a super uncommon one either, but it's one that, if we're not careful, we kind of get into.
Yeah, and we only have so much time, so we don't want to go too big into the weeds.
Right, but I have made significant changes. I mentioned that ideology because I remember it being a fundamental shift for one. Like after that shift, like I started going on a few dates, just like almost right away, and it was just kind of a catalyst.
Mm-hmm.
And then since then I've gone on a significant, for me, number of dates.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for you, maybe inconsequential.
Williams, I'm proud of you.
But I mean, yeah. So I've paid a price so far, but my question is, more of like, what price will I have to pay? What will actually?
I think here's the thing. I don't necessarily say that to say that I think that you should feel like, because Williams, you've seen me.
I know there's not a set price either, or whatever.
I feel like I've put a ton of effort into dating. Right. But I know lots of people. We have very many mutual friends who met a girl and it was the first girl they ever dated and it just clicked and it just went.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens all the time, like with plenty of people.
I'm not bemoaning where I am at life either.
Yeah, I'm just saying that I think that in every relationship, in order to get to that level to where you can have as good a relationship as you'll probably want, I think that you have to go through some hardship to learn. And maybe that's wrong. Maybe it's just me and I'm just that dumb that I've had to go through hardship to learn like that.
I have gone through some hardships in the dating, but not I just said that might be, maybe.
I just said that it might be because I'm dumb. That's when you say, "Oh no, I haven't had any hardships."
I don't think it has to do with intelligence.
Well, thank William. I happy you say.
Maybe I'll retract that statement. Goodness. But yeah, I understand that there needs to be growth in things, but it's just kind of hard to. When have you reached the point where it's just? Because I think we have an interesting dynamic too, and an interesting way of looking at things. Because we are very religious, I think. I mean, that whatever that means, but and I think most religious individuals, especially our age, going through dating and things, have the underlying presupposition that God has a role in stuff like dating, because it's because like you're saying, we have. I mean, we're not always looking at it like, oh, it's the first date? Is this person the person I want to marry? Because I think that you can take that way too far. We've talked about that, but like, where exactly is God's hand in dating? I think that is a difficult thing for us to.
I think it's a hard question, and I think it's one. I think that's an episode in and of itself. And I don't necessarily know that I would say that I have the answer.
And not that I expect anyone
Yeah,
to.
yeah. I just mean,
I think it's different in each situation, to be honest with you.
I think one thing that I will say is the problem is, Williams, is you don't really know like what's going to happen or when or what. Everybody, when I first started dating, I'm actually a really big fan of learning from other people. I love to ask people how they did what they did and how they learned to do that and X and Y and Z and all of the above. So, like, I'm into business. I want to start my own business. Well, I have started my own business.
Man,
It's
you're halfway there.
yeah. Well, I'm already a walking success. Women, wife me up. I'm just
That's not the approach that people should use.
um, I was gonna say,
You ask people about what they do,
no, yeah. So,
how
like,
they
I want
did
to
what
start
they
my own
did.
business. So, I started my own business, but before I started it, I used to go around to every time I met a small business owner, I would ask him pretty much two main questions. Um, what is your biggest piece of advice for someone starting out, and what was the hardest thing for you? A lot of times those two are correlated, but usually after talking to them for a while, I'd learn whether they enjoyed being in business, and about a half of them didn't really. They were just kind of like, just don't. It's too much stress. The other half were like, oh, it's so nice. I do X and Y and blah blah blah. Um, so in dating, I used to pay a lot of attention when other people would talk about their relationships and what worked for them.
Hmm.
And you know what I learned the most?
There's no one thing.
There's no silver bullet.
Wow, I would.
I have
Who might
I
have you
have a
heard that
close
from?
friend who said that. Well, I have a close friend who used to say that. I had a girl I was dating, and she and I started to break up, and we were kind of going through it. And I went and talked to one of my friends, and he said that is exactly what happened to me and my wife. And you know what I did? I gave her some space, or blah 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 blah. If you just give her space, she'll come back. Well, she didn't. And then I talked to somebody else, and they said, "Oh yeah, that happened to me." And we got back together with my wife. So for like a month, I kind of hoped that she would change her mind because I talked to a few people who said that that's what happened to them. Um, but the reality is everybody's relationship looks a little different. And like my one very wise friend says, there's no silver bullet. And so what you do is
Emphasis on wise, maybe. Nope.
yeah, yeah. Well, I did emphasize
Whoever that
wise
friend is, I don't know.
he's a bit of a stud muffin.
Well, I don't know if I'd go that far.
I
That
would.
might be his only decent piece of advice, besides all of his other dating advice that he's giving.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So I don't know. This topic is a tough one because I could go on about this forever, and we probably have lost everybody already who was married,
Well, yeah, but
except
you know,
maybe a few. Maybe a few. If someone's single, they might listen to this episode all the way through.
maybe in the Q&A we'll ask for advice.
But I feel like dating is just super interesting. And in today's society, I think, at least based off of the way that you or I would prioritize things, it makes it difficult, not necessarily to always find people
Hmm.
that have the same prioritization, but being able to recognize their prioritization and then
Oh,
being able
that's
to
fair.
recognize yours at the same note. But I will say one thing I've learned also is there's always another girl. There have been like the first girl I dated. Holy cow! I was so head over heels for her. I was so like, man, she's so amazing. And then when we broke up, I was like, am I ever gonna find anybody with those particular like like characteristics and talents and blah 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 blah, like the way that was like her? And the truth is, no, I will never find anybody who's like her. But I will find somebody else who is different and
Hmm.
who in many ways can be better for me. And so I have many friends who have talked to me throughout like my dating experience so far, and it's not done yet. So maybe I'll take back some of my words today at some point. But for me, every girl that I have dated had things they were good at and had things I really appreciated. But everyone that I've dated after them, I've liked better than the one before.
Oh, so it's just like a continual,
It's
like,
like a continual thing, and I think there's two parts to that. First off, I don't know that I would necessarily say that any of them were better than others. I
hmm.
think part of it is about me actually learning my preferences because it's one thing to theorize about something and to picture what you want. It's another thing entirely to experience it. Um, and then I think it's also about realizing that there's more than one way to do things in life. And so,
Almost like there's no silver bullet, huh?
yeah, I've heard that before. I don't know where.
Yeah.
But so my one thing I say to myself after every breakup is there's always another girl. It's not to say that the last one wasn't great. It's not to say that blah 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 blah. It just means that there's somebody else out there for me, or for you, or for Gerald.
Yeah, Gerald, wherever you are out there, there's someone for you.
Gerald, we believe in you.
Yeah, we do. I think that's some good stuff. Before we close, would it be fun to do some dating words of wisdom that we've heard or that we've come up with? Like just
dating words of wisdom. I think I've given you all of mine, unless there's more that you're thinking.
I think there's some like funnier ones too.
Oh.
Like one of my favorite stories was Starks was kind of going through a rough patch, some dating stuff, and he was constantly like thinking about stuff he needed to do to improve.
I do have a tendency to overthink.
Yeah. Okay. One principle is don't maybe you're thinking too deeply about stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
And I've been guilty of it. Starks has definitely been guilty of it. That's besides the point. What I'm trying to say is he's trying to think about some of the things that maybe he needed to be better at to improve. And we had a friend who, one of those things where he just kind of he got things together in his life, and the first girl he really started to date worked out. He was engaged to this person at this time. He's since been married, and he was on the phone with Starks, who had given him some advice prior to that. And Craig felt the need. I just named him.
That's okay. It was just funny.
Yeah. to ask him the question. Have you ever thought about what you're doing wrong? and Starks had just told me about all the stuff he had thought about.
So the reason this is so funny is Williams and I had spent about 3 hours that morning discussing my dating life and the dilemma I was in at the time, and yada 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 yada. And then I get on the phone with Craig, and he starts talking. Have you ever thought about what you're doing wrong? It was funny. It was funny.
As soon as he gets off the phone, I was gone out doing something. I think I was doing my class or something. And I come back. He's like, "Do you know what Craig's advice for me was?" And I just died laughing.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. So, leading quote today is, have you ever thought about what you're doing wrong? Also, do you want to do this would you rather, and we'll keep it real brief?
Yeah, sure. I haven't. You want to do it?
Well, we haven't. Wait, are you?
A couple other pieces.
Oh, I thought. Okay.
I thought I'd like to leave.
Sorry.
One is whenever you're having a dating problem, I've discovered that any dating thing you can tie to a fishing analogy and figure out the problem that way. Honestly, like Starks and I have talked about different dating things, and I go back and I'm like, we turn this into a fishing analogy. We have the solution to the problem right here.
You know what I just realized, Williams? You know that podcast, that dating podcast I've recommended to you nonstop?
Yeah.
He loves fishing analogies, and he says the same thing.
No way.
Yeah.
See, so it's true in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses.
Yeah, but you won't even listen to the podcast.
I don't have to. Apparently, I know all the stuff that he's talking about.
Fair
I know
enough,
the answers to all the problems. Right
That's
here.
fair. Okay, I respect it.
So, honestly, fishing analogy. Do you have another piece of advice you want to share?
Nope.
I got a couple of them.
You'd rattle them off. If I think of one, I'll butt in.
A good one that I was talking to my grandpa a couple weeks ago. Hadn't spoken to him in a little while just because he lives a distance, and I don't call him all the time. We talk on occasion. I love him, and he knows just about every old song there is, and I really like it because there's a lot of great ones with a lot of good morals. He referenced one of the songs to me, and the name of the song is, or the main part of the song is, "I overlooked an orchid while searching for a rose." I think that's a good principle there.
Yeah.
And it's a song. Look it up. It's a nice classic.
I haven't searched for roses ever since you told me that line.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
You've just been looking for them orchids?
I've been looking for orchids.
Well,
Overlooked a lot of roses in the process.
That maybe wasn't the moral of that, but okay.
What?
I'm trying to think. I may have had one or two more, but I thought those were kind of funnier and fun ones.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and there is no silver bullet for one. What's another phrase they always tell you? That they've always said.
There was one I
I
thought
say
of
these
earlier.
things like I know a lot about dating, but honestly,
Williams, at this point you're a pro.
they're more just principles in general.
At this point you're definitely a pro. There's no silver bullets one you use a lot, and then there's another
mainly
thing you
because
say
it's so
too.
applicable and it's funny.
There's another thing. There's another one you say too. I don't remember it right now though. My brain's freezing.
Obviously, it's not that important, or someone needs to hear it later. When the right opportunity arises, I will say it. I'm sure.
Wait, not again. You probably will.
This goes just beyond dating, but I get certain lines that I just use repeatedly.
He does quite a bit. Well, that's part of all of our inside jokes, how they develop. Because we've probably made a lot of jokes on this podcast that other people don't even get. Is we just kind of build over time, and they just become
what we say all the time.
Yeah, what we say all the time, and then you can throw them in regular conversations. And Williams and I are making a in-depth joke, but nobody recognizes that line was very significant.
Yeah, and it's kind of layered.
yeah, it's pretty fun. I was gonna say we need to do this again, but we need to bring some girls on, like multiple girls. Maybe we could get the old Cox apartment group together.
Oh, that'd be fun.
And have everybody on, and we could discuss perspectives of guys and girls.
It'd almost be like one of our old get-togethers.
Yeah, one of the old wine nights.
That's basically what those were.
The wine nights that had no wine.
Yeah, where we just drank juice. And,
drank juice out of wine
talked
glasses.
about problems.
yes.
That was fun.
Yeah,
maybe
we could do that. We could do an episode of the podcast for one.
Maybe this could be part of a little series. We'll call it Hating Dating.
Hating Dating 101.
Yeah, and this will be part one of that. And then we'll just have different episodes randomly that are tied to that.
I feel like this could be good. I think it will be best with a girl because I feel like we just kind of rant when it's us, which is good, but it's interesting to hear alternate perspectives. Yeah.
I think that's a fun idea.
Yeah.
I think we got some good stuff going, Stark.
Thanks, Williams.
But Starks, I think you're doing pretty good. And you are realizing that there is no silver bullet.
I'm working on it. Working on it a little bit at a time.
Exactly. So we have a fun would you rather question. I don't know what it is.
Neither of us do.
Oh, you haven't even looked at it?
Nope, we picked it out of the pile.
It's even more exciting.
Yep. If it's raunchy, we will switch it. Otherwise, we're going to roll with it. Are we ready?
I'm ready. Maybe. You're reading that quite intensely. I'm not sure.
I was making sure that it was appropriate. So,
in
a relationship, honestly, it's kind of a little boring, but we picked it. We're going to roll with it.
Okay.
In a relationship, when your partner showers, the drain always gets clogged with hair, or when your partner cooks, the drain always gets clogged with food. Which would you prefer? Or would you rather?
That, honestly, I could probably deal with either.
I prefer food. Hair sucks to get out of drains.
That's a good point. And if you have, as long as you have a garbage disposal.
I feel like that one was rough. Do we want to?
Yeah, let's just do a different one. Yeah, pull another one out of the hat.
We're gonna look for an interesting one.
Ooh.
It's the third one down that's got the picture of the person with hearts.
Oh, and A and B are different.
Those are the options.
Okay, would you rather date someone who's always running 20 minutes late, or someone who's always early and gets mad when you're late?
I probably would rather date somebody who's always early, and then I would just try and be early.
I think that's probably, I think I'd say the same thing.
Yeah. But it could be a dilemma if you're someone who always runs late.
Honestly, I always try and get there at the right time.
Yeah.
Because I hate being the first one at things. I don't know what it is, but if I'm the first one at stuff, it just it's really awkward.
It's probably from that one time we went to a church dinner, and it was just us and two other guys.
Oh, and we weren't even early on that one.
No, we were like 10 minutes late, and they had this whole long table set out, and they had food prepared for about 50 people.
Super
and there
nice.
was just 4 people there.
Well, yeah, 4 from the and then
the leaders that were the leaders who were running it. Yeah,
they were really sweet people, and it was a great food that they had prepared.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
So that's what burned you from showing up anywhere early, even though we didn't.
Yeah, and it was consistently 4 people the entire time.
Yeah, nobody showed up at the end.
We had a good discussion too, and
we talked about dating there too, actually, and they gave us advice. There was a lady there.
Was there a piece of advice that we could share now?
Yes, we could share a piece of advice here. There was a lady there who married a man. She was married to him for 10 years, had like 3 kids with him. They got a divorce. It wrecked her life. Very hard for her. And they got a divorce, and she went through a couple of years that were really, really, really hard times she talked about. Then she found a guy who she described as being amazing and the best thing that ever happened to her. And she and him had been married for like 5 years. And she gave us the advice to be patient and just to keep on waging the war, because like you'll get there. It just takes time. And so this is coming from this lady who, I'm not going to guess her age, but she was older than us by a fair bit. And she seemed super, super happy with her situation, but I bet you while going through it was really, really hard. So
undoubtedly,
just keep on trucking.
Yeah, that's a bright lining to have. I mean, this discussion wasn't like sad or anything. Like, there was lots of optimism for you, Stark.
Yeah, I do my part.
Well, I know you do, you goose.
You dirty dog, you.
But I think that's a good important principle to remember. Like, yeah, recognize some things that need changing or whatever. Not everything's perfect. Accept life for what it is. Kind of have that stoic mentality, you might say.
Mm-hmm.
But also appreciate the good things that come, because they will come.
Eventually.
Yeah. Not always in the time you want them, but they will appear. And there are good things that you don't always recognize going on that are going on. So with that, listen if you want. Or not. We don't care.